Welcome to a quiet passage into the world of long-forgotten empires, where time slows, history whispers, and sleep settles gently upon your eyes. Tonight, we journey to the Valley of Mexico, to a city that once shimmered atop a lake, with wide canals flowing like watery roads, temples rising like mountain spires, and people, so many people, moving through the rhythm of daily life. You are not here to conquer. You are not a warrior. You are simply here to drift gently into the folds of history and perhaps, just perhaps, into sleep. Our journey begins in the clamor of a sun-drenched morning in Tenochtitlán, the capital of the Aztec Empire. But there will be more. After the bustling markets, we will move gently into tales of kings and conquistadors, float through miraculous gardens, and finally dine with nobles on obsidian dishes. For now, take a breath. Let the air grow still. Let your thoughts become quiet footsteps on ancient stone streets. And so we begin. Why you wouldn't last a day in an Aztec marketplace. Imagine yourself waking to the faint echo of conch shells. It is just after dawn, and the sky is a soft gray blue above Lake Texcoco. Tenochtitlán stirs. The air is cool, but already smells faintly of roasting maize, damp earth, and fresh-cut herbs. You are a humble commoner, Macahuali, wearing simple cotton, your calloused feet already dusty from the walk down the canal road. The marketplace awaits. In Tlatelolco, the great sister district of the city, a vast open plaza spreads out like a woven mat of human life. It is said that over 60,000 people gather here daily. And it feels like it. Your senses are overwhelmed. The smell of chili smoke stings your nose. Somewhere nearby, a jaguar skin vendor haggles loudly, his voice cutting through the rhythmic rattle of cacao beans being shaken for trade. You pass a fishmonger's stall, the air heavy with the musk of sun-warmed lake perch and eels wrapped in reeds. But trade here isn't casual. No coins jingle. Instead, bartering is strict, precise, anchored in cocoa beans and quashtli, bundles of cloth used as currency. You nervously fumble with your beans, glancing at a market official, a stern-faced Tenochtitlan who watches with hawk-like focus from the edge of the plaza. There are rules, you see, and they are not flexible. Vendors may only sell in their assigned spaces. Weighing goods unfairly is a punishable offense. Shouting falsely about your goods is deceit, and deceit is judged harshly. Off to your left, a man accused of cheating is being escorted away, not with violence, but with ritual humiliation. His head is shaved. He is beaten not with fists, but with words. Reputation here is everything. You tighten your grip on your small basket. You were hoping to buy avocado, salt, and perhaps some chili peppers, but already you're beginning to see the layers of hierarchy around you. The elite merchants, cloaked in brighter cottons and sandals with jade buckles, speak a different dialect. They sell luxuries, obsidian mirrors, feathered fans, and cacao from the far southern jungles. You, by contrast, are invisible to them. It's easy to get lost in this maze of smells and colors and textures, rows of ceramics, soft rabbit pelts, woven rush mats, and steaming tamales wrapped in corn husks. The market pulses like a slow heartbeat, unforgiving and alive. Suddenly, a calm voice breaks the noise. It's a priest, white-robed, face daubed with gray ash, walking slowly past the stalls. People step aside. The smell of copal incense lingers in his wake. Religion is never far in Tenochtitlan, not even here among chilies and beans. At the temple nearby, someone will soon offer flowers and perhaps blood. You notice now the Tzompantli, a wooden rack visible in the distance, decorated with painted skulls. You feel no fear. It is not meant for you. It is simply there, as common and steady as the temple bells or the scent of tortillas on the griddle. But you are growing tired. Trading is harder than it looks. The pressure to know the rules, to speak politely, to navigate social rank, to spot dishonesty without accusation, it's exhausting, and you haven't even found salt yet. You wander past a row of herbalists, women with long braids and low voices who offer cures for everything, from stomach pain to curses from the wind gods. The herbs are tied in bundles and their hands move with practiced calm. One offers you Tenochtitlán, a divine mushroom. You decline, too wary to dream before sundown. By now you feel a small ache in your legs. You glance toward the water. Canoes still arriving, their hulls heavy with baskets of flowers, fruit and fish. You think about leaving, but even leaving has its ritual. You must not cut across the plaza. You must bow respectfully at the shrine in the center. You must pass by the tax officials, even if you haven't sold or bought a thing. There is an order to everything here. Even your footsteps must flow like water. And as you finally step away from the heart of the market, you realize this was only the beginning. A simple market day has drained you, mentally, physically, spiritually. For the Aztecs, this rhythm is constant. For you, it is overwhelming. No, you wouldn't last a day here, but tonight you've walked among them, felt the press of the crowd, the weight of the cacao, the pull of unseen eyes, and now we drift forward into power, prophecy, and the slow unraveling of an empire. The fall of Moctezuma, between gods and cannons. The sun is higher now, warming the carved stones of Tenochtitlán's sacred precinct. You walk slowly beneath a sky that once seemed eternal, yet is about to change forever. Imagine the air just before a summer storm, thick, uncertain. That is how the Aztec capital felt in the year 1519. There was no thunder yet, but something was coming. And at the center of it all stood a man, Moctezuma Xocoyotzin, the 9th ruler of the Mexica, emperor, philosopher, priest, king. His name means he who frowns like a lord. And though his power was vast, ruling over millions, his world was about to tilt. The ruler who watched the stars, Moctezuma, was not a warrior king in the traditional sense. He was deeply spiritual, a thinker, a man who fasted often and spoke carefully. Every decision was weighed like maize on a scale. He believed in omens, in cycles, in the great turning wheels of fate. He had studied the ancient codices, scrolls of bark and deer hide inked with stories of gods, disasters and rebirth, and in them he saw signs. In the decade before the Spaniards arrived, strange things were recorded. A column of fire in the sky, a temple struck by lightning without thunder, a woman wailing at night, warning, my children, your end is near." The emperor did not speak of these often, but he felt them, like tremors before an earthquake. And when word came that strangers had landed on the coast, riding animals with metal faces, he did not send warriors at first. He sent gifts, feathered cloaks, gold, ritual offerings. He wanted to understand who these men were. Were they gods, envoys, portents? Some say he even believed that their leader, Hernán Cortés, was the return of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, prophesied to come from the east. But Cortés was no god, and he had no intention of leaving. Arrival and strategy. Cortés was cunning, calculating. He marched with just a few hundred Spaniards, but with thousands of native allies, enemies of the Mexica who saw a chance to strike at their powerful overlords. As Cortés approached Tenochtitlán, Moctezuma faced an impossible decision. He could meet him with war or with diplomacy. He chose a cautious welcome. In November 1519, Cortés entered the capital. Moctezuma came out to meet him on the causeway of Iztapalapa. He wore fine cotton robes, sandals inlaid with jade, and a crown of quetzal feathers that shimmered green in the sunlight. Behind him walked his nobles, the priests, the weight of an empire. Cortés dismounted unsure. Moctezuma greeted him not with fanfare, but with tears. He refused to look him directly in the eye, and he spoke softly. "You have come to sit on your throne. It is yours, as our ancestors said it would be." Cortés likely didn't understand what was happening. He only saw a ruler offering peace, but in truth, Moctezuma was surrendering to fate, or perhaps, he thought, buying time. Prisoner in his own palace. Soon, the Spanish took control, slowly, methodically. They occupied the palace of Axayacatl, where Moctezuma hosted them. Then, under pretense of needing safety, they took Moctezuma hostage. The emperor remained in his palace, still dressed in fine robes, still treated as sacred, but no longer free. He spoke only when Cortés allowed it. He gave orders that favored the Spanish. He became a puppet. To the Mexica people, this was unthinkable. Their Tlatoani, their great speaker, was the very voice of the gods. How could he be captive in his own house? Whispers grew. Resentment festered like stagnant water. And then came violence. While Cortés was away dealing with a rival Spanish force, his lieutenant Pedro de Alvarado, paranoid, perhaps reckless, massacred hundreds of Aztec nobles during a religious festival at the Templo Mayor. Dancers were cut down. Priests bled out on the sacred steps. The city erupted in fury. When Cortés returned, he found the streets boiling with revolt. The bridges were blocked. Stones rained down from the rooftops. The air smelled of smoke and death. And Moctezuma, still in the palace, still their prisoner. The death of a divine king. What happened next is murky, like a dream half-remembered. Cortés brought Moctezuma to the palace rooftop. He ordered him to speak to his people, to calm them, and so he did. He spoke softly, calling for peace, for submission, for silence, but his words were no longer welcome. Some say the people threw stones. Others say they turned their backs. One version claims the Spaniards killed him, stabbing him in secret. Another says he died of shame. Whatever the truth, Moctezuma's body was returned to his people, wrapped in white cloth, laid upon a pyre. The emperor who had seen the signs, who watched the stars, who bowed to fate, was gone, and the city would burn. You exhale slowly now, the way one does after hearing a sad lullaby. The sun is fading in our journey, and soon so will the empire itself. But first, let us visit the gardens, still green, still floating, where the Aztec world once fed itself with the hands of gods and farmers alike. The floating gardens of Xochimilco, Aztec engineering wonders, breathe in, and imagine yourself drifting on a flat wooden canoe. The waters beneath you are calm, only rippling slightly as your vessel glides forward. The scent in the air is earthy, a mixture of wet reeds, soft mud, and flowering marigolds. Dragonflies skim across the surface, and in the distance you hear the slow creak of another boat passing by. You are floating through the chinampas of Xochimilco. These are the floating gardens, though they do not float in the way you might imagine. Instead, they are islands built by hand, anchored deep into the lakebed, laced together by canals that shimmer like veins through a green heart. This is where the Aztec world fed itself, quietly, cleverly, elegantly, building a floating city of life. Let us begin with the land, or rather the lack of it. Tenochtitlan was founded on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, a shallow body of water in the Valley of Mexico. There were no broad fields to plant maize or beans, no sweeping plains or hillsides. So the Mexica people looked to the lake itself. The process of creating chinampas was both arduous and ingenious. Farmers waded into the shallow lake and drove stakes into the soft bottom to outline a rectangle, sometimes 30 meters long. Then they wove reeds and branches between the stakes, forming a kind of raft. Upon this, they heaped layer after layer of mud, lake sediment, and decomposing plants, until the platform grew rich and dark with life. On the edges, they planted fast-growing trees, willows mostly, their roots sinking deep into the water, anchoring the chinampa in place. Over time, this artificial island became as solid as any natural ground, and unlike dry farmland, it never dried out. The roots of the crops reached easily into the water-saturated soil, drinking from the lake without irrigation. Crops could grow here all year round, and so Tenochtitlán bloomed. A harvest for the city of gods. You drift past one such chinampa now, and if you look closely, you'll see neat rows of them: maize, the sacred staple, tall and golden. Chili peppers, tiny bursts of red, curled like sleeping snakes. Tomatoes, round and greenish-orange, glinting in the morning sun. Amaranth and chia, ancient grains grown for both food and ritual. Beans and squash, coiled low to the ground, their leaves wide like parasols. The canals between the gardens were not just for transportation, they were arteries of commerce and ritual. Canoes slipped silently along them, delivering food, flowers, and messages. At dawn, the farmers, known as chinampanecos, would rise before the birds. They'd row into the gardens, check the crops, whisper prayers to Tlaloc, the rain god. Their hands were calloused, their skin darkened by the sun, and their lives were humble but vital. Without them, the markets would be empty. The temples would have no offerings. Even the emperor's feast would go hungry. There was order here, rhythm, a harmony with nature rarely found in empire building. It was a kind of quiet technology, born not from conquest, but from cooperation with water, mud, and time. Cycles, stars, and the sacred earth. But chinampas were not merely agricultural. They were spiritual. The Aztecs believed in a cosmic order, a balance between the sky and the underworld. The calendar itself, the Tonalpohualli, divided days into sacred cycles, guiding when to plant, when to harvest, and when to offer thanks. Each crop had a patron deity. Each harvest was a kind of sacred exchange. Take from the earth, but always give something back. In the corner of a chinampa, you might find a tiny altar, stones arranged in a circle, or a doll made of corn husks, perhaps a blood offering from a bird, or flowers carefully placed in the soil, like prayers woven into the roots. Even death was part of the cycle. Ash from cremations was sometimes mixed into the soil, returning loved ones to the land they once worked. In this way, life became food, and food became life again. The floating gardens were not just farms. They were part of a living, breathing, cosmic machine, each row of corn aligned not just with the sun, but with eternity itself. Echoes in the present. You blink, and you realize. Some of these gardens still exist. In the borough of Xochimilco, south of modern-day Mexico City, chinampas remain, tended by descendants of those same farmers. Though surrounded now by concrete and traffic, these pockets of green persist. They are fragile, but they endure, just as the spirit of the Aztecs endures, not in conquest or sacrifice, but in this quiet resilience, in the way mud holds a seed, in the ripple of water beneath a wooden boat. Let your thoughts drift now, like the canals, gently winding. Because our next journey will not be among farmers or merchants, but among the nobility. We will climb the steps of palaces, sip chocolate from golden cups, and witness rituals not meant for common eyes. Feasting like a god inside the Aztec nobility. Close your eyes and picture a room bathed in dim torchlight. The flickering flames cast long shadows on walls of polished basalt, while the scent of copal incense hangs in the still air. Sweet, resinous, and just slightly bitter. You are no longer among the muddy rows of the chinampas. You are standing within one of the many grand halls of the royal palace in Tenochtitlan. Thick woven mats line the floor. Feathered cloaks hang along the stone walls, catching the glow like captured rainbows. Here, the air is heavy with ritual, reverence, and power. You are among the elite, among priests, warriors, nobles, and perhaps even an emperor. This is not the Aztec world as seen by the farmers or the market traders. This is a world of excess and exactitude, where nothing is casual, and even a meal is sacred theater. Let us enter it, quietly, carefully and see how the highest castes of the Aztec world lived, dined, and ruled. The weight of privilege. The nobility of the Aztec Empire, known as the Pipiltin, were not simply wealthy or fortunate. Their status was tied to cosmic responsibility. Their lives were governed not by indulgence, but by strict codes of conduct, religious observance, and the ever-present awareness that they were examples, living models of divine will. Their homes were larger, certainly, stone-built, inward-facing compounds centered around tranquil courtyards. But even these private spaces echoed with discipline and expectation. Boys of noble birth were raised to be warriors or priests. Girls were trained in etiquette, textile arts, and devotion. And from an early age, they were taught to speak in florid, poetic Nahuatl, to avoid excessive laughter, and to walk slowly, lest they seem foolish or disrespectful. You might imagine it to be a life of luxury, but it was luxury bound tightly by ritual. Every action had meaning, every word had weight. Rituals of the royal table now. Imagine a feast, not a festival feast in the public square, but a private one held in honor of a visiting dignitary or before a seasonal rite. You are seated on a reed mat, never a chair, for humility must remain even in splendor. Before you lies a wooden tray, carefully lacquered, inlaid with shell. A servant approaches, barefoot, head bowed. They place before you a jade cup, carved and gleaming, within it chocolate. But not the chocolate you know. This is zocolatl, bitter, dark, frothed with maize flour or chili. It is a drink of power, reserved for warriors, priests, and royalty. The liquid is thick and warm. It carries the faint heat of cayenne and a whisper of vanilla pod crushed into paste. It awakens the senses, but gently, like a drumbeat behind fog. Around you, dishes arrive one by one. Tamales wrapped in banana leaf, steamed and filled with spiced turkey. Amaranth cakes, offered first to the gods, then to the guests. Stews of rabbit and duck, rich with tomato, squash, and ground pumpkin seed. And always, tortillas, made fresh moments before, handed to you warm, soft, and folded like cloth. The emperor, should he be present, is hidden behind a screen of feathers, visible only in glimpses. He eats alone. No one is permitted to look upon his face without invitation. His food is tasted first by attendants, not for poison, but for purity. Theatrics of power feasting was not only about nourishment, it was a performance. Dancers moved in slow rhythm around the courtyard, their ankle bells whispering with each step. Singers chanted poems, long, spiraling verses that called upon the memory of ancestors, gods, and forgotten cities. Sometimes, masks were worn, not to hide, but to transform. A priest might don the visage of Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god, and speak in riddles. A noble might appear as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, in a headdress that towered like a tree. Between courses, guests would remain silent. Silence, too, was ritual. Even conversation was structured. No gossip, no laughter too loud. Instead, riddles, metaphors, and elaborate praise. You see, among the elite, every gesture was a spell, every gathering a sacred reenactment. To eat, to speak, to move, it was to echo the gods themselves, offerings of blood and breath. Of course, not all rituals were gentle. The nobles bore responsibilities the commoners did not. They were expected to give more, of wealth, of time, and sometimes of flesh. On certain feast days, it was not food alone that was offered to the gods. Human sacrifice, usually of prisoners, was part of the divine economy. But among the Pipiltin, bloodletting, the drawing of their own blood, was a mark of deep devotion. A noble might pierce the ear, the tongue, or the thigh, allowing drops to fall onto paper, which would then be burned. The smoke was thought to carry the essence of their soul to the heavens. It was not viewed as cruelty, but as balance. They gave so that the sun would rise. They gave so the rains would come. They gave so their people would not starve. The gods, after all, had once sacrificed themselves to create the world. It was only fair that humans return the favor. Soft, fade into memory. As the night deepens and the last embers of the fire crackle low, the nobles retreat to their chambers. The air cools. The sound of flutes grows distant, like echoes through a mountain pass. A servant extinguishes the torches one by one, and in the hush, beneath the stars, you realize. For all their wealth, the nobles lived within the same cosmic wheel as the farmers and merchants. They too prayed for rain, they too feared eclipse, and they too looked to the east each morning, watching for the sun to return. Their cups were golden, their beds were soft, but the weight of the gods pressed on them too, and now we too retreat from their world. Let the image of the flickering palace fade. Let the scent of incense drift away. Let your thoughts grow soft and slow, like the paddles of a boat against still water. Continue when you are ready for the final conclusion. A calm reflection wrapping the entire journey together and easing the listener into restful sleep.